In the quiet hours before dawn, on a cold February morning, Nancy Guthrie sat alone at the small wooden desk she had owned for decades, the one positioned near a window that looked out toward the Catalina foothills. At 84, her hands no longer moved as quickly as they once had, but her thoughts were clear, steady, and full. The house around her, built of warm adobe and memory, had held her through grief, laughter, prayer, and long seasons of silence. That morning, she wasn't writing to organize bills or jot reminders. She was writing to her daughter Savannah, not with urgency, but with honesty. The letter was never intended as a goodbye. It was a confession, written by a woman who had spent most of her life being strong for others and had finally decided to put down the armor. What she wrote would later change how her daughter and many others understood her life. A mother who learned strength early. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky, a small town shaped by faith, hard work, and quiet resilience. Raised in a Catholic household during a time when discipline and duty were cornerstones of family life, she learned early that responsibility came before comfort. As the eldest child, she absorbed expectations without complaint. School was serious, church was central, and community mattered. At Notre Dame Academy, she thrived under demanding academics and moral structure, developing a love for learning and an instinct for leadership. Friends remembered her as sharp, warm, and purposeful. She didn't seek attention, but she carried authority naturally. These formative years taught her that strength was not loud, but reliable. It was something you demonstrated through consistency, not declarations. Those lessons followed her into adulthood, shaping the woman she became and the mother she would one day be. Finding her voice through words and love. At the University of Kentucky, Nancy studied journalism, drawn to storytelling as a way to connect people rather than impress them. Writing came easily to her, not because she chased recognition, but because she noticed details others overlooked. As a student editor, she learned how to frame ordinary moments with care. It was also during this time that she met Charles Guthrie, whose calm presence and curiosity matched her own. Their relationship unfolded with mutual respect and shared faith, grounded in partnership rather than performance. When they married in 1963, Nancy carried both ambition and devotion into the next chapter of her life. She believed deeply in education and independence, even as she embraced motherhood. That balance defined her early adult years. She was never only one thing. She was a writer, a wife, a thinker, and eventually, a mother who would raise her children with purpose and high expectations. Building a life in the desert. When the Guthrie family settled in Tucson in the early 1970s, Nancy found a place that allowed her to root deeply. The desert landscape offered quiet beauty and space to build community. Their adobe home became a gathering place filled with faith, conversation, and structure. Nancy devoted herself fully to raising her 3 children, teaching them that responsibility was a form of love. Faith was woven into daily life, not as ritual alone, but as guidance. She volunteered, organized, and supported others with a steadiness that made people feel safe. To outsiders, her life looked calm and ordered. To her children, she was the axis around which everything turned. Savannah would later say that strength was the language spoken most fluently in their home. It wasn't imposed harshly. It was modeled daily, quietly, and without apology. Loss. That redefined everything. When Nancy lost her husband suddenly in her 40s, the ground beneath her shifted, but she did not allow herself to collapse. With 3 teenagers watching her every move, she chose stability over surrender. She returned to professional work, using her training in communication to support her family and maintain structure. Grief became something she carried privately, believing that her children needed reassurance more than displays of pain. This choice defined the rest of her parenting. Love was expressed through preparation, discipline, and example. She taught her children that life could be survived through clarity and effort. Savannah, especially, absorbed this lesson deeply. Watching her mother rebuild without visible fracture taught her that endurance was the highest form of devotion. But endurance, Nancy would later admit in her letter, came at a cost she never fully acknowledged until much later: the mother and the daughter. She shaped Savannah's path into journalism felt almost inevitable. shaped by both inheritance and encouragement. Nancy recognized her daughter's talent early and pushed her toward excellence with unwavering belief. She celebrated achievements quietly, always reminding Savannah to stay grounded, prepared, and disciplined. Praise was measured, expectations were not. Over time, their relationship evolved into one built on mutual respect and shared understanding. Savannah admired her mother's strength and mirrored it. Yet beneath that admiration lived a longing for reassurance that was rarely spoken aloud. In her letter, Nancy acknowledged this dynamic with tenderness and regret. She wrote that she mistook preparation for protection, believing that if she made her children strong, the world could never harm them. She never intended to withhold comfort. She simply believed strength was the greatest gift she could offer. The confession she never spoke aloud. In the letter, Nancy admitted what she had never said out loud. She wrote that she had been afraid many times, afraid of failing her children, afraid of becoming a burden, afraid of showing weakness. She confessed that she hid health worries behind smiles and downplayed her struggles to protect Savannah's demanding life. She reflected on grief she never processed and dreams she quietly set aside, not with bitterness, but with honesty. She wrote that endurance had become her identity, and she had confused it with invincibility. Most of all, she wrote about love, how proud she was of Savannah, not just for her achievements, but for her kindness. How grateful she was for her grandchildren, whose laughter softened her later years. She asked to be remembered not as perfect, but as sincere, faithful, and human. A legacy, larger than appearances. After Nancy's passing, the letter became a bridge between who she was and who she allowed herself to be seen as. When Savannah shared portions of it publicly, she did so not as a broadcast professional, but as a daughter finally hearing her mother's unguarded voice. The words reframed everything. The strength that had defined Nancy's life was no longer just discipline, but devotion layered with sacrifice. Her story resonated not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar. Many recognized themselves in a woman who carried everything quietly. The community that had known her through service and faith mourned deeply, honoring her life through remembrance rather than spectacle. Her legacy did not live in public recognition, but in the lives she shaped and the honesty she left behind. What the letter ultimately gave her daughter. In the end, Nancy's letter gave Savannah something she had not known how to ask for: permission. Permission to rest, to feel, to release the belief that love must always be earned through strength. It reframed their relationship not as a standard to meet, but as a bond that had always existed beneath expectation. Savannah spoke of her mother with gratitude, faith, and grace, reminding others that even the strongest lives hold quiet truths. Nancy Guthrie's story did not end with her absence, but with her confession, a reminder that endurance is not the absence of fear, and love is not measured by perfection. Through her final words, she gave her daughter, and anyone listening, the freedom to be human,